Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Full Council. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Can I remind members to please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. If you wish to contribute to any items, please write "speak" in the Teams chat function, and you'll be invited to speak in order. It would be helpful if members in the hall could also use that facility on their phones or devices. Could you ensure there's no material posted in the chat function which is actually a contribution to the debate and should therefore be shared in the discussion? The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call, and if any member has to leave the meeting, please either write leave in the Teams meeting. Sorry, wait a minute, that doesn't scan right. Okay, leave in the Teams chat function, then join when you rejoin the meeting, and this will allow us to record member presence and ensure that the meeting is quorate at all times. I've got a couple of things of success to celebrate, so I'll just take this opportunity to note that Dumfries and Galloway Council has been awarded the Investing in Volunteers Charter Mark of Excellence by Volunteer Scotland. This national external accreditation was officially presented to Don Roberts and myself at York Library in Dumfries on Tuesday the 14th of February. And to be the first whole council in Scotland to receive this award is a unique achievement, as we found out on the day, I think, and it recognises the excellent work and significant contribution our volunteers make to this council's service delivery. So I'd like to express on behalf of this council our wholehearted thanks to the volunteers across the region. We're extremely fortunate to have a wealth of volunteers working across Dumfries and Galloway, giving freely of their time and skills, enhancing their local communities and supporting our work as well. And that could be all walks of life where they're carrying out a range of roles, providing pupil support, cataloguing archives, working with the Southern Upland Way Ranger Service, delivering food parcels, carrying out beach cleans and litter picks, and the list goes on. So a big thank you to our volunteers who are an inspiration, working at the heart of our communities, assisting so many people. Secondly, our council building cleaning team from across the region have won the APSI Soft Facilities Management Innovation Awards. Yeah. And we have an APSI champion right here to celebrate that. So facility service at our council have implemented a cleaner and greener chemicals and equipment to support the council priority to urgently respond to climate change and transition to a carbon neutral region. Cleaning up equipment upgrades have also reduced maintenance and energy costs. The winners were announced at the APSI Facilities Management Seminar in Leeds on the 26th of January, alongside the winners of APPG on School Food Excellence and School Food Awards. So well done. Okay, so today our agenda is focused on the council plan, budget and council tax, and we've got 3 budget proposals to consider. So I'm going to take just a moment to outline how I intend to conduct the meeting. So all 3 budgets were submitted within the agreed timescales as agreed by full council on the 29th of September and published on the 21st of February. So we should all have had full sight of those proposals. The budget, because of the way we've agreed to do it, comprises both revenue and capital proposals and have been submitted within the agreed timescales. I'll draw members' attention to Standing Order 10.2.6, which states that the mover of a motion or amendment shall speak for not more than 5 minutes. Each succeeding speaker shall speak for not more than 2 minutes and shall only speak once in the same discussion unless to call to attention a point of order or with the sanction of myself as convener to make an explanation. So I'll therefore permit the authors of the 3 proposed budgets, in our case it'll be myself, Councillor Brodie and Councillor Jameson, and also Deputy Leader and Councillor Dougie Campbell as the authors of the SNP Independent Group budget. For the Labour Group budget, Councillor Dryborough and Councillor Wilson. And for the Conservative Group budget, Councillor McGregor and Councillor Johnson can be invited to speak to any questions in their particular budgets. And that's in the same way as an officer would answer questions on their own report, our representatives will be able to give answers to our budgets. So it's just for that point of clarity there. If a procedural motion is proposed, the debate on the budget motion will be suspended to enable that procedural motion to be debated and a vote taken. contributions to the debate on a procedural motion are separate and won't prevent a member from making a contribution in the debate on the budget. But the provisions of Standing Order 10.2.6 will still apply, so hopefully that's clear to members. And for the avoidance of doubt, the definition of a point of order is a query in a formal debate or meeting as to whether the correct procedure is being followed. So hopefully that's clear as well. On to the meeting proper then. So sederunt and apologies. Vlad, are you able to provide the sederunt and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, members. I can confirm we have had no apologies. We have 35 members present in the hall. We have 8 members present on Teams platform, and therefore members present at the start of the meeting is 43. Excellent,
full house. Declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener. It's in regards to item 7. I just want it to be noted in reference to my role as Cause Lived Resources spokesperson. I'm still involved with national negotiations on teachers' pay, etc. However, because that's a national position, doesn't affect the position here in D&G, I will still take part in the debate. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. Councillor Brodie.
Declaration of Member of Ann Harbour and History Town groups. I don't believe my interests are sufficient for me to withdraw from the debate. Thank you.
Okay, any other? Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks, Chair. It's on the Armed Forces Champion role. It is a regional role rather than an individual role, so I just asked for that to be in budgets, but obviously there's 2 budgets with that in. But I don't think it stops me from being involved in the discussion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dryburgh. And I think that's it for that item. So that takes us to the minute of the meeting of 15th of December 2022. Are we happy to approve that? Okay, thank you. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Convener. Point of order. Prior to this meeting, I submitted a notice of motion under Standing Order 15.2. I was informed that I was just under 2 hours late in doing so, so I asked yourself as Convener to consider this as an emergency motion under Standing Order 15.3, which you refused to do. I'd be grateful if you could reconsider this position, and if not, explain your decision and why you do not consider the lack of a fair funding settlement for our council as an urgent matter. Thank you.
No, thanks, Councillor Dorward. So, as you say, the notice of motion was submitted out with the deadlines. I'm not in the habit of taking late motions, and while our settlement is obviously important, it's not urgent in the same sense, as in no material decision we could have taken discussing that today would have affected the budget that we need to set today. So hopefully that helps explain that. Thank you. So that takes us on to item 4, which is minute of meeting of 3rd of February 2023. Are we happy to approve that? Thank you. So that takes us then on to item 5, which is the council tax restrictions on voting. Just to point out, there's an administrative error on the published agenda for this item, which is showing the recommendations for item 7, but I think it's the details are correct in the actual papers themselves, so it's just to clarify that if members have picked up on that. It's a procedural report presented in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Finance Act 1992. It's a legal requirement that a member who is 2 or more months in arrears of council tax does not have voting rights in relation to fixing council tax, and is required to make a declaration to that effect if that's the case. Nick Evans is here to assist members with any questions. Any comments from members on this, or are we happy to note? Thank you. So that's noted. That takes us then on to item 6, which is the council plan. So this report presents the council plan 2023 to 28 that's been developed following a programme of engagement and involvement of all elected members, and I'm sure we've all enjoyed participating in this since last year, and also consultation with citizens and stakeholders and staff as well. I'd like to say I'm actually very pleased to see this come before this council after all the work that's gone into it. I'd like to thank the staff who've undertaken a power of work just to bring it all together, and also welcome the positive responses that we've had from quite a significant number of consultees who thankfully have actually broadly agreed with what we'd set out as a council plan, although there have been certain valuable comments that I think officers and ourselves in this report are acknowledging that we should take on board to help actually improve the council plan as presented. So, so thank you to everybody involved. Obviously, this has come under the advent of our new chief executive, so I'd like to invite Dawn to maybe say a few words on this. Over to you.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, members. You have the report before you with the recommendation to agree the council plan for the period 2023 to 2028. This is brought to you following extensive work by officers and, importantly, following significant member input across political groups and also public, staff and stakeholder consultation. First of all, I'd like to thank members for their participation and contributions to the process. The development of the council plan has been member-led through the leaders panel and through a series of member workshops open to all members. And the proposed plan is definitely richer for this process and reflects the priorities that members have identified throughout the last few months. Secondly, I'd like to stress to Council the importance of this plan. This is our key strategic document. It sets out our vision, our priorities, and our principles for the next 5 years. And this is important to our staff, for our stakeholders, and the communities we serve, and provides a basis on which we will set out our annual plan of deliverables. It's the basis on which our performance will be managed, and importantly for today's meeting, the basis for the alignment of our resources. So the budget, in essence, is a financial reflection of the council plan. So thank you, members, and thank you, Convener, and I'll hand back to you to take the item forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. So we have, I think, Councillor McGregor, do you want to come in?
Thank you very much, Leader. Firstly, I would probably echo your comments and commend the staff, pardon me, and departments on their hard work. I think you've done a tremendous job engaging with all elected members, stakeholders, third sector partners, and obviously the public. And we obviously have a good vision and aspiration. I would say it's a bit of a wish list at this stage, and it's quite a high-level document. So I suppose I appreciate the consultation responses that have gone into, reaffirm some of the commitments that we do have and just make them a bit more obvious, but it is quite a high-level document. So if the plan is adopted, what we need is assurances that we are going to look at the how. We can always look at the aspiration and the end goal, but now we need to really focus on the how if it's agreed, the priorities within it, and ensuring that financial resource is committed fully to meet any of the aspiration. And I say that because we're going to move on to the next item in a moment and determine our budgets. And if we're truly committed to the outcomes and the vision of this document, then we need to have a longer term 3-year budget that enables us to work within the parameters of poor settlements and the such like to meet that aspiration. So I commend the document, I commend the plan and the hard work that's gone on behind the scenes. I think we're going to get into the tricky part on the next item as to how we deliver it and how we ensure that there is absolutely sufficient resource to meet that aspiration. But otherwise, I'm very happy to back the plan as is.
Thanks, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Drybrown.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I agree with Gail. In a lot of ways, it's about what happens in the future, and obviously the deliverables are at the next full council as to how we're going to do that. Again, the staff have been immense in delivering this council plan to us today, and happy to agree with the recommendations moving forward. I do think the next item is going to be the one that makes sure that the deliverables can actually happen, and I'm looking forward to that debate.
Thank you, Councillor Driver. Any other questions or comments on the council plan? No, well, in summary then, I think from the contributions we've had, a good piece of work all round, and it should set the long-term course for this council, which I think officers and members alike will take great comfort in knowing that we've got a clear vision endorsed by the community and the partners that have responded to that. So I think that's, again, testament to the work of the team involved. So thanks, members. So are we happy then to note the consultation responses? Thank you. And agree the council plan 2023-2028. Thank you. And then note that elected members will be asked, as we've already alluded to in the discussion, to consider the council plan annual deliverables for 2023-24 at full council on the 30th of March 2023 as detailed. Okay, thank you very much. So that takes us on to item 7, which is Budget and Council Tax 2023-24. This report provides information to assist members in determining the council budget and council tax level for 2023-24 and the updated 10-year capital investment strategy. The report sets out the current budget position and the funding challenge, as well as providing details of the capital investment strategy, and therefore provides the basis from which members have been asked to develop their budget proposals. We have got Paul Garrett here as our Section 95 officer, available to assist members with any questions. Any questions for Paul? No, very thorough report, so thanks, Paul. So are we happy to note then the information reflected in the report? Noted. Thank you. That takes us to item 8. So this is the presentation on budget proposals for 2022-23, or 2023-24, I think I should say. So this is the first budget of this council term, and I can safely say it's quite an interesting one. So what I would like to do is propose the SNP and Independent Group budget for approval, and I'll say a few things just about what's contained in our budget. I think on the back of the decision to recognise the council plan and the long-term strategy that sets out, I think that's helped frame the way in which we've had to consider the longer-term budget of this council as we try and transform and innovate to a more sustainable and solid council basis for actually delivering services in the future. I think we recognise that our key asset is staff, and in order to support our staff, we need to ensure that we've got the right blend of funding to be able to continue to deliver the vital services across the region that we fulfil. Because without the staff, obviously, it's meaningless, and I think we have to recognise the essential strands of the funding that we have at our disposal to do that. The decisions we take this year will have a long-lasting effect in terms of what we'll be able to afford to do next year, and obviously we're aware that we've got a number of tools at our disposal, including unallocated reserves, how we set the council tax, and our ongoing commitment to lobby for our settlement funding that's going to actually help us deliver services into the future. So the other thing we did as a council when we first came to a decision was to agree to work using an inclusive budget panel and leadership panel and business bureau, and that was to actually trail a lot of the budget decisions that are included in all the budgets here today. And I think all members have had sight of that and realised the importance of embedding those things, particularly our priorities for the cost of living and the roads investment, which is a feature of all budgets to a greater or lesser extent. But in terms of our budget, I think we've tried to follow the principles so we can deliver both now and in the future to deliver the best sustainable outcome for everyone within our communities across the region. We know there are financial challenges and competing priorities, so we'll continue to lobby governments for support because they provide the majority of our funding. We also know that to protect vital services, we have to continue to transform and modernise how we work. And I think as we go through the budget proposals today, you'll see lots of examples about how we transform our use of energy, transform our use of assets, transform the way we deliver services, and that's part of what we need to try and do in order to innovate and transform. Council tax is obviously a key part in protecting our vital services and jobs, and our SNP and Independent proposal recommends setting that at 6.5% and then dropping down in previous years. I think we understand that the council tax level in Dumfries and Galloway is currently 7% below the national average, which equates to an annual income forgone of 5.6 million per year, which is something we simply can't afford if we're serious about resourcing our staff to continue to deliver services. We're fortunate to have corporate measures at our disposal to make some of the savings required, and I think we've taken good advice from the Section 95 officer through the course of our budget panels to agree to take flexibilities that will save 3.7 million combined with the gradual release of the school's PPP sinking fund, and also by successfully delivering Scottish Government policy requirements, we're able to save a further £1 million in revenue. And again, these are common to a lot of the budget proposals. I think where we start to differ is about where we invest more in our cost of living proposals than some of the other budgets on offer. We know that over a 3-year period, our budget continues to invest the £630,000 revenue funding, as well as a significant increase this year to take that funding level up for the people most in need. We're also committed to the additional £30 million investment in our roads over the next 5-year period. I think it's a 4-year block of an extra investment in capital and revenue per year, with an annual uplift in the revenue investment as well. And I think that's been clear from the start of this council that investment in the road, even just to bring us back up to a benchmark and beyond, has been vital in terms of maintaining the infrastructure that allows us to deliver services and support our economy. We've also, in this budget, committed to investing £250,000 in an enabling fund for additional support for learner provision. And we're also intent on investing in our transport network so that we can continue to run bus services, which we know are vulnerable, and we need to work to transform how we deliver sustainable public transport services in future. We don't want to take any cuts in education. I know that some of the budgets have different ways of looking at that in the future, and we know that we want to protect teacher numbers for this time, although I think we will continue to work with colleagues to try and find a better way to deliver a more rounded service for education that includes teachers and all the people who support the child in the classroom. We also want to invest in our single access point for social work out of hours, and we've committed a budget that will extend that this year and beyond, because that's provided a single point of contact for people most in need, and it simplifies the process, and I think that's something that will continue to keep jobs in that particular sector. We'd also like to invest more region-wide across the school estate, and I think that's part of where we get to our capital programme, which I think we need to come back to and review probably prior to the summer, because we know we've struggled to deliver in capital projects, and we know that costs are increasing. So I think we have to come back to that and review, but ultimately we also know that there's a need to invest in our school estate, particularly in the Stewartry, also in Upper Nithsdale, Wigtonshire and in Annandale, because we're focused very much at the moment on DLT2, and I think we need to look beyond that, and I think that's what we've charged officers with when we commit to this budget going forward, to enable that transformation and investment in the school estate across the region. Our capital investment strategy is again similar to others, but we've included a £200,000 enabling fund to get the diligence done by the experts so that we know whether or not we should be continuing with the White Sands proposal as it stands. It's long been a controversy for this council, and I think we need to be assured that whatever goes forward, or if we go forward, it does demonstrate best value to this council. But in order to secure that, we need to do the work to find that out. And I think that's what it needs to come back to members to make that final decision. So with that sort of summary, I don't know if I stayed within 5 minutes, I would move that we agree the SNP and Independent Group budget proposal and council tax for 2023-24 and indicative budget given for 24-25 and 25-26 as published on the 21st of February. Agree to commit 20% of our annual allocation from the Coastal Communities Fund generated by Crown Estate Scotland to improve and maintain our outstanding coastal footpaths and facilities and recognise what a valuable resource this is for our region. Agreed to create a £250,000 contingency fund using existing resources and the Strategic Equity Fund to help provide additional learning assistant capacity when required. Agree the application of the service concessions, fiscal flexibility and gradual release of the school PPP sinking fund in line with the approach outlined in the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee at the meeting of 7th of February 2023. Agree that the budget to be delegated to the Dumfries and Galloway Health and Social Care Partnership for delegated social care services will be the 2022-23 recurring budget level, plus the full share of the additional funding reflected in the 23-24 local government funding settlement for these services. And finally, agree the investment of the existing employability policy funding balance of £352,000 to build on and extend the success of the Kickstart Plus model by offering a further 30 places for people aged 16 to 67, as recommended by the Economy and Resources Committee at its meeting on 24th of January 2023. So with that, I invite the Deputy Leader, Councillor Richard Brodie, to second the motion.
Convener, fellow councillors, the leader has gone into great detail in the budget, so I'll be just brief and set out our group's priorities and how they're being met within the budget. It gives me great pleasure to second the budget, which the independent group has agreed with SNP councillors. It delivers on our constituents' priorities to support those struggling with the cost of living, tackles the backlog in roads maintenance, commits to invest more in the school estate, invests in support for learning to get it right for every child, and supports our communities to regenerate. It also meets our independent group manifesto commitments to support those struggling to get direct help from support agencies and to prioritise footpath maintenance as well as roads in our communities. Some of our group considered a higher council tax increase and some contemplated a low one, but reached a consensus that 6.5% was a fair balance which protected D&G residents' finances as much as possible, whilst allowing us to deliver on people's priorities over the next 5 years. Many of our group have learned the bitter lessons of setting the council tax too low in the past, and it was then quite easy to bask in the momentary glory of making Dumfries and Galloway the lowest council tax in mainland Scotland. But by God, we paid for it, the worst roads in Scotland, swinging education cuts and services which were understaffed. The 5% budget is very well intentioned, but looking at the figures, it's quite clear that it will lead to much higher rises to the public purse in the future, and we will not be able to deliver the priorities which we want. In conclusion, I commend this budget to you. Despite inflation of 10% and a cash-flat government settlement, we're able to limit the tax rise to 6.5%. Our prudent approach will allow us to deliver key priorities set out in our council plan, and it will still probably be at the bottom of the council tax league table. Thank you very much. I second the budget as proposed by the leader.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I now invite other groups to propose and second their motions. Councillor Dryborough.
Convener, I have the privilege of proposing the Labour Group budget today, indeed being the first time in my 16 years as an elected member proposing or seconding a budget. 16 years of budget cuts to local authorities. I never came into being a councillor to cut budgets to try and improve things, but that's what we've had. At the outset, of course, I'd like to thank Councillor Caroline Wilson and Councillor Linda Dorwood, who have led on the budget on behalf of the Labour Group, and I'd like to thank all the officers who are directly and indirectly involved in the budget process for their work and advice. It really has been appreciated. During this budget setting process, the Labour Group has sought to work with all parties to secure agreement to deliver a budget that delivers for a region, reflecting the results of the council elections last year. However, this has proved to be challenging. I think we all see our timetables and programmes and calendars being increased day on day on day. The context of this budget setting is a stark one. On one hand, public sector finances are under considerable squeeze by a Tory government that seeks to fix its mistakes, and on the other hand, we have an SNP Green government that is acting as a conveyor belt, passing significant cuts onto councils and not being honest with the public on the breadth of services councils pay for and deliver. We are at a crucial point. Councils cannot continue to have our funding from the Scottish Government cut. If it continues to happen, then our council, along with every other council in Scotland, will fail to deliver the statutory service which many of our local residents rely. But an equally important context for us to consider as part of this budget setting is the cost of living crisis that is forcing too many families and households in our region to choose between heating and eating. The decision we take today will have an impact on how the cost of living crisis affects residents across the region. Data published by the Office for National Statistics show that Dumfries and Galloway, the average weekly pay for full-time workers between 2021 and 2022 increased by £1.50. Yes, that's correct, just £1.50 a week, meaning families in our region are suffering from the cost of living crisis more than families in other parts of Scotland, and will find it even more difficult to pay the bills. That's why the Labour Group have been clear in this budget setting process. While the UK and Scottish governments abandon families and households by rolling back on the energy price freeze promise and by refusing to put in place a cost of living act respectively, our council must do all that we can for the people in our region. That's why we've produced a budget that protects spending on education and delivers nearly £3 million in measures to tackle the cost of living crisis, with almost £1 million of this funding being used to fund direct payments to residents in or at risk of poverty. And our budget would deliver this with a limited council tax increase of 5%, or the equivalent of £1.08 per week, ensuring that our council does everything we can to protect household finances and help families in our region in the face of the cost of living crisis and high inflation. With 3 budgets on the table, elected members have a choice to put families and households first and inflict the lowest possible council tax rise on households while protecting education spending by voting for the Labour Group budget. I just want to say on a 3-year budget, the Labour Group have not produced a 3-year budget as there is significant uncertainty. There's an SNP leadership election. All 3 candidates are already making pledges to reverse SNP policy and legislative decisions, and we hope they'll also reverse the chronic underfunding of local councils. And I'm happy to move that chair, convener. Sorry, just read it, the motion, as you did. So the Labour Group motion is agree the Labour Group budget and council tax proposal as published on 21st of February 2023 for financial year 23-24. Agree the application of the service concessions fiscal flexibility and gradual release of the school PPP sinking fund in line with the approach outlined to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee at its meeting on 7th of February 2023. Agree that the budget to be delegated to Dumfries and Galloway Health and Social Care Partnership for delegated social care services will be 2022-23 recurring budget level, plus the full share of the additional funding reflected in the 23-24 local government funding settlement for these services. Agree the investment of the existing employability policy funding balance of £352k to build on and extend the success of the Kickstart Plus model by offering a further 30 places for people aged 16 to 67 as recommended by the Economy and Resources Committee at its meeting on 24th of January 2023. Agree that the investment of recurring revenue roads funding, the governance and assurance team and the procurement commissioning team are reflected in the budget model for financial year 24-25 and subsequent years, and agree that Social Work Services Committee will review the ongoing resource needed for the single access point out of our services. Okay.
Thanks, Councillor Driver. So do you have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Convener. Seconding the Labour Group budget, a budget that delivers for families, for households and invests in our region's infrastructure, particularly roads. I want to associate myself with the thanks to officers across the Council who have been involved in the budget setting process. I especially want to thank Lorna, Paul and Gillian who have supported me in this budget setting process and as Chair of the FPT Committee. This budget setting process is forcing all elected members to make stark choices today, and those stark choices are having to be made while residents across our region face the worst cost of living crisis in a generation. Councillor Driver only told in part of the shocking story of average weekly wages across Dumfries and Galloway. During 2021 and 2022, the Office of National Statistics show that the average weekly wages for women fell by £1.90 a week. It's with those facts that the Labour Group could only support a budget proposal that supports people during the cost of living crisis and keeps any council tax rise as low as possible to ensure local residents keep as much of their money as they can to pay the bills, which only seem to be increasing at this moment in time. And that will continue to be our approach for the duration of this council. We will not stop making the case to the Scottish Government for a fair settlement that reflects the services we deliver. It is not inevitable that the brunt of the SNP green cuts lead to council tax rises being forced on the backs of local people. It is a political choice. The Labour Group will not accept this political choice, and that is why we are unable to vote for budgets that assume council tax rises for future years. We must all surely have an approach where council tax rates each year consider the circumstances of that year and are kept at a rate which is fair for residents and allow us to keep services running. The Labour Group have put forward a budget that invests nearly £3 million in the cost of living support, invests in our region's infrastructure, protects education spending and puts forward the lowest council tax rise possible. And with that being said, I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other movers? Councillor Johnson, Malcolm.
Thank you. Thank you, Convener. And again, I would like to echo the thanks to the staff who've been involved throughout this whole process. It's, I've not been involved in this for as many years as some people sitting in the chamber at the moment, but every year it seems to be a bit of a work fest that we get going on through here, and we're all rattling around with the different figures. And ultimately, in the end of the day, I still believe that everyone in this room wants the same thing. In the end of the day, we want the best for the people of Dumfries and Galloway. And at the moment, it's not going to come as a surprise to anybody. We're going through very difficult times, very uncertain times. All the residents are struggling. We've got businesses going through cost increases. We have people, as we say, struggling with energy bills. So on that basis, we've got to do what we can to help that. And as for the council itself, we have suffered high inflation through, again, our energy costs, through food costs, through capital construction costs, all creating uncertainty. So the impact of this inflation, it can't be overstated, and it's got to be taken into account. But despite these challenges, our budget proposal would deliver a comprehensive cost of living support of nearly £2 million. See additional revenue and capital investment in our roads totalling £20.6 million for capital expenditure and a recurring £2.5 million over the next 4 years for the base budget. We have also decided to make sure we can protect our education, because our young people are the most important thing, I would say, and we need to look after education. We need to make sure the choices are still available for young people in their schools. We would also deliver an ambitious capital investment programme, again, as we've all highlighted so many things that are the same in the budgets for the school estate. We want to keep that going forward. We need to look after our town centres. So we would propose to support communities in the best way we can, and also we would like to potentially develop further proposals for business support going forward and town centre support. But the thing is, faced with uncertainty, we have put forward a prudent budget which will be balanced over the 5-year period. And it's through this prudence that we will have money left in the tank in future years. At the moment, we don't know what the future settlement is going to be. And this is the elephant in the room, which the Labour group have highlighted more than adequately. We've been facing continued poor financial settlements from the Scottish Government. And it's going to come to a point where things have got to change. And as Councillor Driver said, we're going through an election process for an SNP leader at the moment. Perhaps things will change, but we don't know they're going to change. So our prudent budget, which keeps some money in reserve in case things don't improve the way we would like them to improve going forward. So I would recommend that we adopt the Conservative group budget. So I'll now have to find the motion and read it out. So I propose that we agree the Conservative group budget and council tax proposals for 2023-2024 and indicative budget plan for 2024-25 and 25-26 as published on 21st of February 2023. Agree the application of the service concessions, fiscal flexibility and gradual release of the school PPP sinking fund in line with the approach outlined to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee at its meeting of 7th of February 2023. Agree that the budget to be delegated to the Dumfries and Galloway Health and Social Care Partnership for delegated social care services will be the 2022-23 recurring budget level plus the full share of the additional funding reflected in the 2023-24 local government funding settlement for these services. Agree the investment of the existing employability policy funding balances of £352,000 to build on and extend the success of the Kickstart Plus model by offering a further 30 places for people aged 16 to 67 as recommended by the Economy and Resources Committee at its meeting of 24th January 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. And do you have a seconder?
Happy to second, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Okay, we have 3 budgets proposed and seconded, or moved and seconded.
Can I say a few words? Is that okay? As a second?
I thought you were just going to be very concise. Okay, thank you, Councillor McGregor.
Oh, come on, you know I'm never that concise. No, I will be brief though. I think echoing what Malcolm and possibly what Archie said as well, this is one of the worst budget settlements that I have ever seen. There's no question of that. You know, we've got additional centralised, ring-fenced Scottish Government priorities. So on the surface, it looks as if we're getting more, but we're not. Our base budget has decreased year on year for 16 years that I've been here, let's be honest. We've just agreed a long-term council plan, and to deliver that, we need a long-term budget. We need to know that in years 2 and 3, when things are going to get even tighter and even worse, that we're not going to have to put council tax up by, say, 10% to cover the deficit that's going to come down the line from Scottish Government. This is why we have proposed the budget we have. We've got a very comprehensive cost of living package. I understand what Labour are trying to do here by giving cash to families that we did last year, but that money came from UK Government consequentials to the Scottish Government to us. And I think what we need to do is ask, what is the Council here to do? What are we here to deliver on? And we need to keep within the parameters of that. We have a spring statement coming from UK Government soon. We'll definitely have a new leader in Parliament, hopefully slightly more prudent than we've seen in the past. There are going to be changes, but we don't know that there isn't additional money going to come for families. People are being supported at home through energy payments to their fuel accounts and various other schemes. So my view would be that to have the additionality that's in the Labour budget or in the SNP budget would mean that we would either have to increase council tax exponentially or only give a one-year budget. And as I say, we've just agreed a long-term council plan. We cannot afford to not have a long-term council budget. And I feel that our budget covers all the areas which the public and the voters that we've spoken to and that elected us wanted to see within our budget, but they also want to know that in 3 years' time they're not going to have to pay 10% council tax, and in 5 years' time we're still a solvent council that are delivering the services that we need to deliver. So the other, will we come to questions after this? Because I did have one question.
Yep.
Right, we'll come to questions after. So on that basis, I'm very happy to second our budget, and I just cannot emphasise enough that the financial pressures on local government are immense, absolutely immense, and we have to focus with absolute target precision every single penny that we have in a prudent and sensible manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McGregor. So we have 3 proposals moved and seconded, which is effectively a motion, an amendment and a counter amendment, which we'll get to. But as you say, if there's any questions on specifics, Councillor McGregor, you had one.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep the tone quite positive, but I have to say that there's an element of disappointment in me. We did talk a lot over the last almost a year now around collaboration and inclusion, and we were signed up to that until a month ago. As you know, I was attending Leaders' Panel. The social work out of hours single access point has come as a real puzzler to me. Now, I'm aware that there was something in the Independent Manifesto way back when, and we had initial discussions around that. But unlike the spirit of the Roads Improvement Plan and the Cost of Living plans, this has never been trailed through the Budget Bureau or through the Leaders' Panel. Now, my view would be that if the Conservative group had been privy to this information, we would have included this in our budget as well. And I also asked the question on the back of that as to how it's gone in, something that is so pivotal potentially, how it's gone into a political space and it's not gone to social work with a direction from the head of social work to say, we really need this, we need £240,000 for this, please can you back it? Social work members can scrutinise it, look at it, determine it's a good project and then punt it to FPT for the funding. So I suppose my question is, why were we not engaged in this particular project? And my disappointment, I would just like it to be noted.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think maybe I'll invite Councillor Brodie to respond to that.
Yeah, thanks for Councillor McGregor for that. I'd just like to say that a number of leaders' panels I have raised having a dedicated call line. I think I've raised it about 12 times in the last, since June, since we formed an inclusive administration. So it shouldn't be a surprise that the independent group called for that. The single access point, it has been there, but it's just not been promoted properly. So it is there. It's just continuing the work that is going on in social work services and hopefully improving access to the things. Yeah, perhaps there could be better communication, yes. I don't think that the Conservative Party came to the last budget panel where there would be an opportunity to discuss those priorities. So, yeah, I think, yeah, probably our groups could work closer together and speak more often.
Thank you. Did you want to come back on that? Does that clarify?
It does kind of clarify it, but I still maintain that I understand that the independent group were looking for a dedicated call line. That in of itself is just a phrase. There was no substantial way forward brought forward either through the Business Bureau, Budget Bureau or Leaders Panel. I didn't attend the last meeting, but I have checked the minute of that meeting and there was no mention of it. So the single access point has come as a complete surprise to us when we saw your table budgets. And I just want to stress my disappointment, because if it's so vital, everybody in this chamber should have known about it.
No, thanks, and that's noted, Councillor McGregor. So unless there's any further questions, we can just go to the vote. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to ask a question about, it's page 51 of Agenda Item 8, supporting community-led economic regeneration in Annan. £90,000 non-recurring. I note that this focuses specifically on Annan Harbour Action Group and Annan History Town, and Councillor Brodie did declare an interest in both Annan Harbour Action Group and Annan History Town. And my question to SNP Indy elected members and colleagues is, why is this specific action being included in a strategic budget proposal, and why is it in a political space, to re-quote Councillor McGregor, given that it isn't part of a strategic proposal? And I don't see any other specifics in budgets from any other group. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dorward. Councillor Brodie again.
Yeah, I think the budget template explains it in detail. Thank you.
Councillor, I think Hagman first. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jameson.
Yeah, our rationale with this request from the independents was based on the fact that the substantial amount of work gone into Annan Harbour project in particular, and they were unsuccessful in a levelling up bid. So our support, as we would support any region in this in a similar situation, is that there's a plan going forward to Westminster, and we would like to continue with that effort. There's a substantial amount of effort gone into that for a legitimately positive regional community, and we were willing to support that, just to ensure that the work that has gone ahead isn't entirely wasted. Then we have make another effort to take that forward.
Thanks, Councillor Jameson. I've got Councillor Hislop to speak.
Thank you, Chair. There's an old saying that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Now, in our budget, we took the view that we needed to look over the longer term and take into account what we know roughly just now. What are we actually looking at if we were to back a Labour budget where 5% and additional spending this year? When I put it into our budget model that was supplied to us by officers, we could be looking at 10% over the next couple of years just to balance the books. Now, is that something that Labour are hiding, or is it something that they don't want the public to know? Could we maybe have a response from either Councillor Driver or Councillor Wilson, please?
Thanks, Councillor Hislop. So does any of the budget leads from the Labour group wish to pick up and respond to that?
Yeah, I'll come back with that. Obviously, as I said before, the Labour Group have not produced a 3-year budget as there's significant uncertainty in the future with regards either the SNP leadership or that. The rate of inflation and the cost of living crisis is also placing significant pressure on the council finances. If inflation falls, this has a positive impact on the council budget over the longer term. Every other budget proposal commits to a council tax of 6%. The Labour Group believe that this is premature and that other parties are committing to council tax rises to balance the books without knowing any future levels from Scottish Government, which makes up 80% of the council budget. We also look at one of the templates in that the potential of the what used to be a transformation board is now with discussions with Lorna and that the potential of opportunities of savings between £8 and £10 million then reduces the chance of a higher council tax moving forward. The issue is that some people have said, and it's frequently pointed out, but it's untrue, that the majority of people in our region will be suffering from the impact of cost of living crisis. And the council tax rise does not affect those on the lowest income. That's what people say. Council tax is a regressive form of taxation. There are people on Band G who receive either a full or a partial council tax reduction, which is an indicator of low income. Any councillor who says a council tax rise does not affect those on the lowest incomes is basically not telling the truth. So that's why we've put the 1-year budget in place, is because of all those issues together.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Hagman next to speak.
Thank you, Leader. There's been a lot of play about the budget settlement, so I don't necessarily want to go over all that. However, I would make very clear that, of course, as a local authority, we would want and wish to have more funding available for our communities. However, I just want to make the point that Scottish Government does have hard political choices to make, and certainly we are living with those. Those political choices include increasing payments for child payments, but they also include mitigating the bedroom tax, mitigating what is known as the rape clause. They give us free prescriptions, higher education, and we are living as a result of a lot of the chaos that ensued of Westminster at the tail end of last year. So that just offers a little bit of background and a little bit of balance, I think, to the debate today. I would also say that I'm absolutely delighted to have the council plan agreed, and one of the points in the council plan that we have all agreed to and signed up for the next 5 years is that communities are protected from the impacts of floods. That's on page 84 for anybody who would like to see. So looking at the budgets before us, we've got 3 budgets, and each and every one of these budgets have got a commitment to flood schemes. I'm delighted to see the Newton Stewart flood scheme in all budgets. And I'm also glad to see that the White Sands is also in all 3 budgets with a commitment of £21 million made there for year 2032 to 33. So there is long-term planning for that. However, I would like to ask the Conservative lead with this as to why they've removed the £200,000 that was allocated and agreed to go to FPT committee at communities in December. So they went through the debate, and that was agreed by all members to go through as a recommendation. And as detailed in the SNP independent budget, this is in order to allow due diligence to take forward the correct and most appropriate scheme. So can I ask why that is missing from the Conservative-led budget? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. Does any political response from Councillor McGregor?
Very happy to respond. The Communities Committee last year, we actually voted or moved to have that removed from the proposals, and it went to a vote as far as I remember, and I'm very happy to stand corrected. None of us doubt that White Sands and Langham both need flood prevention schemes. There's no question of that. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We have other pressures within council, and we don't feel at this time it is appropriate to spend £260,000 in total on external experts to come in and tell us we have a scheme which is going to run way over budget, is 10 years obsolete now, and I think that we need to remove that funding from this year's budget, put it into the 2032-2033 budget line, and if required, go back through Economy and Resources or the appropriate committee to look at a proper scheme for these areas. But to spend that money in this financial year on external experts while we're talking about a cost of living crisis, to me, is irresponsible, to put it bluntly.
Does that answer the question, Councillor Hagman?
It does to an extent, Leader, thank you. I think it's just a pity it doesn't align with what was previously said about supporting businesses, and I understand that businesses along the White Sands are crying out for a scheme to go forward, but the correct scheme, not just any scheme, which is why we had put it in. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I've got Councillor Marshall, I think, who's been waiting.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Just with regards to Councillor Malcolm Johnson, he made a big statement about the ongoing support of his group to education of our young people. But at the same time, they seem to be the group that have chose to include the most severe education cuts in their budget. And some of the proposals may end up with the council being penalised if implemented. So I just wondered if you would like to comment on that statement.
Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Thank you, Convener. If you read the budget for this year, we have not taken savings from education. We're perfectly aware of any consequences that would have went with that as well, but we chose not to. We have, however, included it as a prospective for the next 2 years, but that is purely indicative. We went through it at the budget panel. If I remember rightly, there was agreement from all groups on the budget panel looking at education savings, but we've all elected not to take them this year, but perhaps it may have to be under review for the future.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Blake. Apologies, Councillor Marshall's hands was up in the room before your name was in the team, so apologies if anyone misunderstood him. Councillor Blake.
No problem, Convener. It's in relation to the use of the coastal, or 20% of the coastal benefit funds in the SNP independent group budget. When this fund was first raised, it was agreed by the council that it would be put to communities that who could bid in for their own projects, and we all agreed to that. Last year, when an additional payment came from the coastal benefit fund, it went to a vote, certainly, but it was agreed that for a one case only, that because of the short timescale involved, that the council would use these funds for communities' benefits. Now we see in the SNP independent group budget that 20% has been taken and centralised, thereby taking this away from the community's decision. I would like that explained. Thank you.
So I'll respond to this one, Councillor Blake, as one of the budget leads for the SNP group. But this is really just to, I suppose, codify the commitment to spending 20% of a coastal benefit fund on the coast, and that's across the whole, across the region. So it's not centralised unless you mean it's along all of the coast on a coastal path. So I think it's very much in keeping with the purpose of the fund, which is to develop and enhance coastal communities, in line with our tourism ambitions to open up the region and make it more accessible for everybody. So I think it was really just to commit a 20%, some of that, and we know the revenue fluctuates year on year. It may go up, it may go down, but it's really down to making that commitment so that we can invest and maintain in the coastal path infrastructure, and that's from Gretna to Port Patrick, so and beyond, I'm sure. So I think it's really just to give that commitment, and it's a line in the budget. So if it's agreed, then that's something we can take forward. The 80% remaining, of course, that will be then down to the Communities Committee to determine how that's distributed. But that, I'm sure, it will be in the same way as in the past, where bids will come forward from the communities. I hope that helps clarify. If we now get
Mike, can I come back on that, please?
Yeah, yes. Is there something I didn't clarify? But on you go.
Yes, this is to clarify a point that you raised. The centralisation was in decision making, not in the actual practice of disposing these funds. I think by doing that, you're taking that away from the communities who could look after their own coastal paths and do so. There have been bids in the past, and there no doubt will be in the future. Thank you.
No, that's noted. Thanks, Councillor Blake. Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, thank you, Convener, for letting me in. Just quickly on that last point that Ian Blake made there, I think it's prudent that we actually understand that in the lead up that the Coastal Benefits Fund until last year was actually underspent each year. So the 20% is making sure that we've got good furniture, for example, litter bins, make sure they can get lifted, car parks are sorted, that kind of stuff. So that's why it's there. It's no a case of centralisation. It's to give the community's directorate staff the tools to do the job we're asking them to do, right? And that's one way of doing it. So that, but the real reason I've come in, sorry, Convener, is that I'm going back to the White Sands. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Councillor McGregor said the White Sands money is off the table for this year, but would be reintroduced next year. Right.
So you can respond to the question, Councillor McGregor. Can you do it with the...
Yeah, I'm not quite finished my question. So the question is, have you kicked into touch temporarily, or have you permanently kicked into touch?
Okay, thanks, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor McGregor.
I think in terms of how long is a week in politics, 10 years is pretty much kicking it way down the road. We need a proper plan for the White Sands.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, that wasn't an answer. I asked if it has it been kicked into touch for a year, or is it kicked into touch indefinitely? I'd like an answer to that question, please.
Councillor McGregor.
Indefinitely.
Okay, I think that's fairly clear. So, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Convener. Just with regards to the cuts for education, it says there is one paper that is 10 full-time equivalents, and there is one for 4 full-time equivalents. That's not teachers. That's as an individual. That's equivalents. That could be potentially a huge amount of the education staff. And my concern would be that we would end up losing teachers, but then having to pay fines. And it's something I've raised time and time again with the Education Committee. And just to pick up on Councillor Hagman's point, it's not just businesses on the sands that are suffering when the sands floods, it's every business. Every business in this town suffers. And people that live locally to the sands. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to watch people lose their businesses in such a way. Thank you.
So is there a question there for a particular budget?
No, it was just a statement. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you. I'm going to stick with education, and I commend Labour's efforts. Sorry, that's my phone. I do commend Labour on their commitment to investment in education and not calling for any cuts. From our perspective, listening to the Conservatives' narrative on education, I'm referring back to one of the original statements they made on the council plan that we're looking for action and not words. Well, both the Labour and particularly our independents and SNP, we've got a clear vision on how to support education, and it's not just about not cutting, it's about investing. And we are the only party with independents that have actually identified that we will have £250,000 contingency funding for us to support learners. We'll use the strategic equity fund that comes to £2.9 million to ensure that staff are retained and trained so that we have the best education possibly. And if I recall, on the council plan, we all signed up to get it right for every child. Now, that is a really important statement. And if there's no commitment to action from the Conservatives other than a vague commitment to invest in education, then it needs to be in their budgetary plan, as it is in the SNP and Independents. So I would ask the Conservatives to consider just what they're going to do with education rather than the platitudes that it's important.
Okay, do you want, are you asking the Conservatives to respond to that in terms of, okay, Councillor McGregor?
I'm very happy to, but I'd first like to clarify the statement from a number of the Labour members, and I do really appreciate it's incredibly difficult for Labour to understand a multi-year budget. But we are not taking the teacher savings this year. We are not taking the education savings this year. Government have been clear in their Scottish Government have been clear in their direction to protect teacher numbers, which we are doing. They may be in for future years, but we don't know what the policy will be from Scottish Government come next year and what diktat they'll throw down on us in subsequent years. So I just want to clarify, we are not taking cuts from education, absolutely not. We have left a bit of money in the tank over the next 3 years, very deliberately, because we know that there needs to be investment in additional support for learning, in various other things within education, which our Education Committee and its membership will determine. And I think it's incredibly important to do it in that space. And it comes on the back of the council plan, which we have just agreed. So I think agreeing everything in the chamber today would be disingenuous, because this council needs to be a moving beast with moving parts that reacts and develops policies going forward over the next 3 years. And I hope that clarifies it. And this is what I mean by having a good long-term vision, which my group do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Convener. The statement you made introducing your budget was, you said a key asset was our staff, which I wouldn't disagree with. In fact, I would concur with that. Your group, the SNP Independent and the Independent group, are proposing a council tax rise of 6.5%, yet the pay rise for SGC workforce this year was 5%, which effectively means that they are that doesn't really square with a council tax rise of 6.5%. So how do you square this equation of key asset is our staff, we value our staff, yet we're going to increase council tax way above the pay rise that COSLA and government awarded to staff this year? Thank you.
Yeah, so just to respond directly to that, I think it would be nice if numerologically everything lined up. So if you got a 5% increase in this and inflation was 5% and council tax was 5%, unfortunately, I think in most budgets it'll be the difference between £1.05 to £1.20 in bands A to C. In most salaries, it'll be a significant amount more than that, thanks to the settlement for the SJC. So 5% of a smaller number is much less than 5% of a bigger number, and that's just arithmetic. You don't need to be top of your class in maths to figure that out. So I think that's just it's comparing two different things. Councillor Slater.
Yes, just to say about the flooding, when the petition was started, virtually everybody in the Sands didn't want that scheme. The scheme is now 10 years old and technology's moved on in leaps and bounds, and it needs to be looked at again. Nobody's saying they don't want a flood scheme, but they want one that will actually work. So that is something that you need to think about. Another £200,000. Now, I believe that the car park has been sold. That's a very important issue and a very pivotal point. So that's maybe something that you should actually look at before the £200,000 continues on. Thank you.
Is that a question to a specific budget, Councillor Slater?
It was just a general question, and this is the amount of people I have here today that don't want it. There's at least 6,000 people there, and those people have to be listened to. You need to look at flood schemes, but you need to look at ones that will actually work, not just one plan. You need to look at it in upstream as well. You need to look at that too. There's a lot of issues here, and they really need to be looked at. I don't know why they haven't. Thank you.
I think, to be fair, the money that was agreed at Communities Committee was in part to do exactly that, which was to make sure that the expertise was there to effectively make sure the scheme, as we understand it, has the right detail and is fit for purpose. So I think that's where that works. We're going to go.
So I think, Chair, that should have been done a long time ago, and it probably was. So I have to ask the question again: why did they have to look at this system again when it was agreed to build as is? So there's a lot of issues here, and water increases under. I'm not going to technicalities here, but I think they should really. It's over 10-year-old. Telephones 10 years ago probably were the size of bricks. Now you can put them in your pocket as a supercomputer. So as I'm saying, Technology's moved on, really, and they should go back to the drawing board and look at modern designs and equivalents. Thank you.
No, it's a reasonable comment, and I think the second best time to do something is now if you can't do it in the past.
Sorry.
So I think
it really is a waste of funds and not value at this time. This has been
sorry, excuse me.
Well spent.
Excuse me. Sorry, through the chair, please, if that's okay. Sorry, did you want to come in, Councillor Dennerley?
I agree with the points being raised that this is a waste of funds. What's happened today hasn't been successful. We need to look at the priorities, how we can get real improvement, and even looking at other services like access to interpreting services.
Okay, and did you wish to put a point to any particular budget?
No.
Okay, no, your comments noted, thank you. So I've got Councillor Ian Carruthers next, I think.
Thanks, Leader. I'll be as brief as I can. It comes back to, it's one of the points you actually made yourself, so I'll refer it to yourself earlier in regards to the White Sands, because it keeps coming up and I'm still a little bit confused about it. My understanding is there's a plan that's been approved by the Scottish Government and it's pretty much in concrete, so to speak. It's fixed, it can't be changed, and that's been touched on as well. I need to understand, before I've got any questions, of exactly what is the £200,000 being spent on. It sounds like, through what you said earlier, £200,000 will be spent on consultants to tell us that it will be more expensive. But I will have a question on the back of your answer. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, so I think that was another respondee said £200,000 will tell you it's more expensive. It may well be. But I think what we've contained in our narrative, which will be included, I think, on the frontis on the website after this meeting, is we support a review of the White Sands Flood Protection Scheme, which provides the due diligence so that members are fully aware of the scope and suitability of the design of the current project and associated cost-benefit analysis. We will appoint external project cost and other advisors to provide the detail that members need to make further capital funding decisions, and I think that's just a responsible way to go about business. So if that's helpful, Councillor Carruthers, Ian, that's what that's for.
Thank you, Leader. So I think the main point I'm taking from that, it will tell us, the £200,000 will tell us the projected costs, future costs for our White Sands as it's been agreed and approved by the Scottish Government. But I think there's much simpler and easier ways in which to come to that point. And I go back to what's been said previously by other speakers against the White Sands, that is. I think it's prudent we remove the £200,000 and it can be, that type of information can be gathered in much easier, simpler ways and much more cost effective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carruthers. Councillor McGregor, did you want back in?
Yeah, thank you so much for indulging me, and I will shut up after this. It was really just a question back to the Labour Group again in the creation of a one-year budget, and I don't want to put Paul on the spot either, but as is with our proposals and the SNP proposals, we have a lot of savings options that need to be met going forward. We have transformation programmes, and we have investment in various things contained within a £400 million budget. Are there operational implications of only having a one-year budget for some of the sustainability of those 2 and 3 year projects?
Okay, I'll pass over to Councillor Dryburgh to respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's implication in any budget going forward. It's not just our budget. A one-year budget is what we're taking forward because of what we mentioned earlier on about the unknown that's going to happen in the next few years. We don't know, for instance, if we're going to get more fundings. I doubt it very much. But we are in a position that we have a budget in place that has been agreed by the Section 95 officer and the officer for delegations to make sure that it is a proper budget moving forward. We are clear that we want to put extra budget into the roads, but clear we want to put extra budget into social work moving forward, and that's where we are at the moment. So, but we need to make sure that this cost of living crisis is actually fixed first. I'm not saying that we're going to fix the full cost of living crisis, but we want to help the people here in Dumfries and Galloway as best we can with this particular budget.
Thank you. I think if members are minded, that's an hour and a half. I'm conscious they might need a breath of fresh air or a comfort break, and then we'll come back and we'll go to the vote. Members happy with that? We'll stop for 10 minutes, so I don't even know if that clock's right, but come back at, what's the time actually? Well, if we come back at 12, I think that's probably easier just for the clocks. Okay, members, thank you. Welcome back, members. So I think I was just planning to go to the vote unless there's anybody who hasn't spoken who wants to come in. Councillor John Campbell.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, my question is to the about the Conservative budget, and it's on the back of Councillor Ferguson's question about the White Sands, and the response was it's taken off indefinite. However, I'm looking at their capital investment strategy, and it clearly states here the White Sands is still in their capital budget of 21 million or over 21 million. And my question would be, if the White Sands is definitely off forever, why would they leave 21 million sitting in the capital budget and not put that, say, towards building new schools, for example, or other capital projects? I'd like a response, please.
Thanks, Councillor John Campbell. Councillor McGregor.
Sorry. Yeah, we've been very clear that 21 million is allocated for 10 years' time. We've not disputed that a scheme is required in that area. There's absolutely no dispute around that. It's the nature of the scheme as is. Now, I think it's absolutely fair to keep that money in the future for any future flood scheme for the White Sands, but in its current form, we don't believe that it is a competent scheme anymore. I think Councillor Carruthers made the point as well that we can take this back through Economy and Resources and other committees in a sensible, business-like manner to look at a scope for another scheme, which we will require funding for, but we don't believe that 200,000 at this time would be a good use of money. So money stays for a scheme in the future, but just not this scheme.
Thank you. With that then, I don't see any other... Well, Councillor Marshall, you have been in already, but as a specific question.
It was just another question to the Conservative group. It was just in relation to, back at the start of the Council, Conservative leader Gail McGregor made a big statement that the two main priorities for her group going forward would be roads and cost of living crises. So what I'm wondering is, why is it that the Labour group budget at the moment matches the Tory group investment in roads? The Labour group budget is the budget that proposes the biggest increase in investment in cost of living crisis across all three budgets. The Labour group budget also has the lowest council tax increase of 5% of the three budgets. The Labour group budget may not be the preferred option for the other political groups in this room today, but it's the best budget proposal for everyone outside this room across Dumfries and Galloway in the current economic climate and cost of living crisis. Have the Tories reneged on their two main priorities?
Thanks, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Thank you, Convener. No, we haven't. As I tried to make clear, we have chosen to keep money in reserve. We don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years. We may need to revisit and improve cost of living support then. We don't know when this crisis will be over. We see it potentially as perhaps a slightly longer term issue than just a 1 year quick fix. So that is why we've done what we've done.
Thank you. One of the things probably all the budgets would include would be about energy efficiency in buildings. I'm getting the sense that it's getting quite warm in this room. So maybe there's something we could accelerate in that regard. Okay, I don't think there's any other contributions, but can we now go to the vote? So we've got a counter amendment and an amendment. Maybe if we just get that without... I think all the three motions, all members have seen those, hopefully, so I don't know if there's a way to summarise for the benefit of the meeting in terms of the counter amendment versus the amendment. Glad.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Convener. I'll just run through the process. It's probably the easiest. I think all members have already had the verbal motions and the voice has been shown on the screen. So in terms of the process, we've got very clearly a motion which is moved by yourself as Convener and seconded by Councillor Brodie. We've got an amendment which is Councillor Drybar and seconded by Councillor Wilson. And then we've got a counter amendment, Councillor Malcolm Johnson and seconded by Councillor McGregor. As hopefully members will be aware, in terms of standing orders, 10.2.4, usually the counter amendment goes against the amendment first, and then thereafter the successful amendment goes against the motion in that kind of final vote. So that will be the process. Are there any questions on that process for members? Or
No, I think we're happy to go to the vote, I think.
okay, in which case we'll start with the counter amendment and amendment, and I'll just ask my colleague Fraser to put it up on the screen for all of us to see. And I'll just do the roll call as usual, and if you could just state clearly whether it's amendment or counter amendment, please. Convener?
Abstain.
Deputy Convener Civic Head?
Amendment.
Deputy Convener Deputy Leader?
Abstain.
Councillor Bell?
Counter.
Councillor Beretti?
Abstain.
Councillor Blake?
Counter.
Councillor Doogie Campbell?
Abstain.
Councillor John Campbell?
Abstain.
Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Karen Carruthers?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Dashbert?
Abstain.
Councillor Davis?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Dempster?
Abstain.
Councillor Denerley?
Counter amendment.
Okay. Councillor Dorward?
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Ferguson?
Abstain.
Councillor Giusti?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Hagman?
Abstain, please.
Councillor Howe?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Howie?
Abstain.
Councillor Hislop?
Counter.
Councillor Ingalls?
Counter.
Councillor Jameson?
Abstain.
Councillor Malcolm Johnson?
Counter.
Councillor Maureen Johnson?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Jordan?
Amendment.
Councillor Little?
Abstain.
Councillor Lowe?
Abstain.
Councillor McGregor?
Counter.
Councillor McCammon?
Counter, please.
Councillor McFarlane?
Abstain.
Councillor Mayo?
Counter.
Councillor Marshall? Sorry, Councillor Marsh. Apologies.
Counter.
Councillor Marshall?
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie? Councillor Slater?
Counter.
Councillor Stevenson?
Amendment, please.
Councillor Stitt?
Amendment.
Councillor Walters?
Amendment.
Councillor Wilson?
Amendment.
Councillor Wood? Okay, he's got counter in the chat. Okay.
Hello, sorry. Yep, it's counter. Sorry about that.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Young?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you, members. As members will see on the screen, the counter has 19 votes. There's 16 abstentions and 8 for the amendment, so the counter is carried.
Thank you, Vlad. So that brings us then to the next part of the process. Just take us
the
through
next
that.
vote. So just moving on to the next vote, if you just bear with us, we'll just clear the screen. Okay, so this time, just for members, will be the motion against the counter, and therefore if you could vote accordingly, I'll just call out the roll call. Convener?
Motion.
Deputy Convener Civic Head?
Abstain.
Deputy Convener, Deputy Leader?
Motion.
Councillor Bell?
Counter.
Councillor Beretti?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Counter.
Councillor Doogie Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor John Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Karen Carruthers?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Dashpert?
Motion.
Councillor Davis?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Dempster?
Motion.
Councillor Denierley?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Dorwood?
Abstain.
Councillor Drysdale?
Counter amendment.
Councillor Ferguson?
Motion.
Councillor Giusti?
Counter.
Councillor Hagman?
Motion, please.
Councillor Hill?
Counter, please.
Councillor Howie?
Motion.
Councillor Hislop?
Counter.
Councillor Ingalls?
Counter.
Councillor Jameson?
Motion.
Councillor Malcolm Johnston?
Counter.
Councillor Maureen Johnston?
Counter.
Councillor Jordan?
Abstain.
Councillor Little?
Motion.
Councillor Lowe?
Motion.
Councillor McGregor?
Counter amendment, please.
Councillor McCammon?
Counter amendment.
Councillor McFarlane?
Motion.
Councillor Mayo?
Counter.
Councillor Marsh?
Counter.
Councillor Marshall?
Abstain.
Councillor Scobie? Councillor Slater?
Counter.
Councillor Stevenson?
Abstain.
Councillor Stitt?
Abstain.
Councillor Walters?
Abstain.
Councillor Wilson?
Abstain.
Councillor Wood?
Counter.
And Councillor Young.
Motion.
Okay, as members will see, for the motion, there's 16 votes, for the counter, 19, and there were 8 abstentions. Therefore, the counters carried.
Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Convener. Obviously, the Labour Group is disappointed that the Tory Group budget has passed. We've tried repeatedly to try and reach an agreement with other groups to avoid the situation, but that ultimately proved impossible. Unfortunately, the Tory budget has no commitment to direct cash payments to those most at risk during the cost of living crisis. So, Councillor Caroline Wilson, Deputy Leader of the Labour Group, has written to the proper officer to request that under Standing Order 16.2, the next meeting of full Council considers a report on the cost of living crisis and the possibility of the Council providing cash grants to those most at risk. We believe that this is essential for the Council to support those most at risk because of the cost of living crisis, And this support is needed now more than ever, given that the UK Tory government is bringing energy bill support to a premature end. If officers or indeed full council consider such a report to be inappropriate, then the Labour group will submit a notice of motion under Standing Order 15.
Okay, so given the result of that, we've got a budget agreed. My position is untenable in the current circumstances, so I can't really lead an opposition budget. So I'll step down at the end of this meeting, but if you'll permit me to carry out my duty as convener at this point, and I'll go to the last item and then close the meeting. So that takes us on to item 9, which is King's Coronation Bank Holiday.
Sorry, convener, just on that one, is that appropriate for that to be brought to the next full council and that?
Yeah, so no, thanks for the statement, Councillor Dry, but I think governance have said they can process that in the proper way. Okay, so that takes us on to the King's Coronation Bank Holiday, item 9. This is to consider the bank holiday arrangements associated with the celebration of the King's Coronation on Saturday, the 6th of May 2023. We've got Mike Shepley here to speak to this. Is there anything you want to add at this point, Mike?
Not at this point, Leader, thank you.
Okay. So any questions for Mike on this particular report? Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener. It's not a question as such. I'm just looking at the recommendations. We're being asked in 2.2 to agree one of the options as outlined in the report. So as the SNP Business Manager, I would like to propose option 1 at recommendation 2.2. While the whole region will have a fantastic opportunity to celebrate the coronation of the new King on the Saturday, following our previous item and the strains on our council budget, the report makes reference to almost £1 million it would cost to this council. And certainly at this point, I don't feel it would be appropriate to earmark that money at this point, but would wish everybody the very best time to actually celebrate the coronation on the Saturday, which is when it will take place. Thank you.
Thank you. And is that, are you moving that, or is...
Yep, I'd like to move that as one of the options. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Kimlow.
I'd like to second the motion, please.
Thank you. Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks, Convener. Obviously, as the Armed Forces champion, you know, the chance of doing a coronation is always, as far as I'm concerned, once in a lifetime. And you know, we look to, you know, promote this as much as possible across the United Kingdom. I believe that option 2 covers all of those particular things, and I would suggest that we move that as an amendment, if that is required, to grant the one-off additional fixed leave date on the 8th of May.
Okay, thank you. And do you have a seconder for that, Councillor Johnson?
I would like to second that. Option 2.
Okay. I did want to ask, through yourself, just in terms of the report, there's been some representation about consolidated workers on consolidated hours being entitled to this or not. I'm just wondering if you could provide a response, because if all staff are entitled to a holiday, or some staff are entitled to a holiday, it would be good to get that clarification, depending on what way the outcome goes for the motion and amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also joined by Stuart Clanacan, the HR Manager, and co-author of this report. I'll ask Stuart to come in a moment because we have some further detail around numbers, but with regards to the query around those working compressed hours, there is a distinction between part-time workers and those working compressed hours, being that those on compressed hours receive their full holiday entitlement. They merely work their full allocation of hours, compressed usually into 4 days from 5, and therefore to allocate this small group of people an additional day's leave would take us out of any local or national agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if Stuart, you wanted to come in on the back of that?
Thank you, Chair. No, just to confirm that the primary reason, the principle behind that is to clear a pathway that allows as many staff as possible to be off work on that day. And obviously, we have facilitated that in the past, in 2022, most recently in 2011 prior to that. Obviously, there will be some staff who will have to continue to work to provide those critical essential services. So we have to continue to operate in that way. The option put forward is mirrored across Scotland, and around 93% of other councils are mirroring the approach that's laid out in the papers in front of members today. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful to get that clarification. So we've got a motion and amendment on the table. I'll go through the first part of the recommendations, which is firstly, one, to note UK and Scottish Government announcement for an additional bank holiday on Monday the 8th of May. Are we happy to note that? Take that. And then to agree an option from those outlined in section 3.9, and here we come to the motion and the amendment. So Vlad, if you can maybe just clarify, please.
Thank you, Convener. And just to run through the two options for members. The first one is the motion proposed by Councillor Hagman and seconded by Councillor Lowe, and that is in regards to paragraph 3.91, which is option 1. Is that correct? Just to check with the revert. Yep. And the amendment proposed by Councillor Driver and seconded by Councillor Malcolm Johnson, which is option 2, which in the papers is under 3.9.2 of the report. Okay, if all members are clear on that, we'll proceed to the roll call, and I'll just ask my colleague to put it up on the screen. Okay, thank you. Convener?
Motion.
Deputy Convener Civic Head?
Amendment.
Deputy Convener Deputy Leader?
Motion.
Councillor Bell?
Amendment.
Councillor Beretti?
Motion.
Councillor Blake? I think he's struggling. Councillor, I can see you're trying to get your microphone off. If you could put it in the chat, we can come back to you if you can't unmute. Okay. Councillor Beretti?
Motion.
Sorry, I've called that already.
That's
Apologies.
twice.
Councillor Doogie Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor John Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Amendment.
Councillor Karen Carruthers?
Amendment.
Councillor Dashbar?
Motion.
I'll maybe try and go back to Councillor Blake just to see if you're able to unmute.
Yeah, amendment.
Thank you. So just go up a bit, Fraser, sorry. Okay. Councillor Davis?
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster? Councillor Dempster?
Sorry, I thought you were looking for dash. Motion.
Councillor Denearly?
Amendment.
Councillor Dorward?
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale?
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson?
Motion.
Councillor Giusti?
Amendment.
Councillor Hagman?
Motion, please.
Councillor Howe?
Amendment.
Councillor Howie?
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop?
Amendment.
Councillor Ingalls?
Amendment.
Councillor Jameson?
Motion.
Councillor Malcolm Johnston?
Amendment.
Councillor Maureen Johnston?
Amendment.
Councillor Jordan?
Amendment.
Councillor Little?
Motion.
Councillor Lowe?
Motion.
Councillor McGregor?
Amendment.
Councillor McCammon.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor Mayo.
Amendment.
Councillor Marsh.
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall.
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie. Councillor Slater.
Amendment.
Councillor Stevenson.
Amendment.
Councillor Stitt.
Amendment.
Councillor Walters.
Amendment.
Councillor Wilson.
Amendment.
Councillor Wood.
Amendment.
And Councillor Young.
Motion.
Okay, as members will see, the motion has 14 votes and the amendment has 29, and therefore the amendment's carried.
Thank you, members. So we've agreed option 2 then, and are we happy then to note that subject to that decision, the main impact would be a loss of productivity on Monday the 8th of May 2023, and that no additional financial provision is required as set out in paragraph 3.10.6. Okay. And then finally, to note that the provision of early learning and childcare will be suspended on Monday the 8th of May as detailed. Okay. So thanks very much, members. I have one item of urgent business, and that's basically to confirm that I'll step down as convener, and that'll trigger the appropriate subsequent meeting. I'd like to, at very short notice, thank everybody who's supported me in this role. It's been always been a privilege and occasionally a pleasure. And I'd just like to thank all the staff and leadership team for the support in helping me represent this council in the proper way. And I look forward to continuing to work, but in a slightly different role going forward. But thanks everybody for your support, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.